Both visited Raleigh once before this year, but yesterday marked the first time the pair visited together. CW's Mayor Fomet was there when the pair made their way to the Old North State to talk to voters about health care and to make their case in the run-up to November's election.
Welcome to Carolina Week. I'm Samantha Hoffman.
And I'm Muslim Mahmood.
We start off with some breaking news this morning. Republican presidential candidate Nikki Haley is suspending her campaign. This comes after she was soundly defeated by former President Donald Trump on Super Tuesday.
Haley won only one state throughout the primary, defeating Trump in Vermont last night. This leaves Trump as the last major candidate in the Republican primary, setting up for a likely rematch with President Joe Biden in November.
Haley is ending her campaign after voters headed to the polls across the country and across the state here in North Carolina last night. Our reporters were at watch parties, actually, as they went throughout the state and collected the results. Isha Patinik was in Raleigh with the Democratic Party.
And Christian Phillips was in Greensboro with Republican Mark Robinson. We'll hear what the parties had to say last night.
Well, back here in Chapel Hill, how are the Tar Heels looking? It's been a busy week in sports.
Yeah, no kidding, Christian. For the Tar Heels, top seeded in the West region, the UNC men's basketball team, they're looking to keep dancing in Los Angeles tomorrow night, where they will face off against Alabama in the Sweet 16.
But first, interim Chancellor Lee Roberts is in his second month on the job. Now, I had the opportunity to sit down with him and ask him a few questions. He told me what changes we might see on campus.
Welcome back to Carolina Week. Time to grab some season tickets because Durham's Performing Arts Center just announced its new season.
13 individuals you see right here. Now, they've been chosen to be part of the search committee to try find the next chancellor. They're faculty, students, staff, and members of the Board of Governors. Coming up, it can be hard to find a park in Chapel Hill, but some people are trying to fix that.
Plus, with spring break right around the corner, how you can avoid being ripped off.
And with this warm, dreary weather, is winter gone for good? We'll take a look in our 5-day forecast.
All that and more next on Carolina Week. Stick with us. Welcome to Carolina Week. I'm Samantha Hoffman.
And I'm Muslim Mahmood.
We start off with some breaking news this morning. Republican presidential candidate Nikki Haley is suspending her campaign. This comes after she was soundly defeated by former President Donald Trump on Super Tuesday.
Haley won only one state throughout the primary, defeating Trump in Vermont last night. This leaves Trump as the last major candidate in the Republican primary, setting up for a likely rematch with President Joe Biden in November.
Haley is ending her campaign after voters headed to the polls across the country and across the state here in North Carolina last night. Our reporters were at watch parties, actually, as they went throughout the state and collected the results. Isha Patinik was in Raleigh with the Democratic Party.
And Christian Phillips was in Greensboro with Republican Mark Robinson. We'll hear what the parties had to say last night. Our Sarah Thompson joins us in the studio to break down the primary results. Sarah, it didn't take long for the presidential races to be called.
That's right. CNN called the two presidential primaries shortly after the polls closed, but all of the votes are counted. CNN has projected winners for most of the races in our state. Joe Biden and Donald Trump handily won their respective primaries. Biden was the only candidate on the ballot and received 87% of the vote. Trump received 73% of the vote, followed by Nikki Haley, who received 23%. On the state level, Attorney General Josh Stein won the Democratic governor primary with 69%. That's him right here. He was followed by former state Supreme Court Justice Mike Morgan at 14%. On the Republican side, Lieutenant Governor Mark Robinson won with 66% of the vote, followed by State Treasurer Dale Falwell with 18%. The crowded Republican primary for lieutenant governor still has not been called by CNN. Hal Weatherman currently leads with 19% of the vote. His Democratic partner, Rachel Hunt, won her primary with 70%. Finally, current Democratic Representative Jeff Jackson won the Attorney General primary with 54% of the vote. Dan Bishop ran unopposed in Republican primary. The next major day for primaries is March 12th, when voters in Georgia, Mississippi, and Washington will go to the polls. Back here in North Carolina, There were reactions across the political spectrum after the results came out last night. Carolina Week's Isha Patnaik was at the State Democratic Watch Party in Raleigh.
As Democrats here concluded the night in Raleigh, supporters told us that they are excited to support their candidates and the futures they represent. The crowd went wild for candidate John Stein and Governor Roy Cooper, whose name even got chanted a few times throughout the night. Mark Robinson, on the other hand, was not a fan favorite amongst these voters. They told us the reasons they have to support the Democratic Party.
I serve as a pastor, and we have some similar passions as it relates to making sure that there's equity and equal opportunity for people to live, grow, work, and play.
Key issues have to be women's rights, have to be voting rights, labor rights. Those are my top three. Making sure we don't lose farmland to development.
We also asked about what issues on the ballot are most important to them. They listed abortion laws, gun violence, education, and the economy as their top priorities. From Raleigh, I'm Isha Patnaik with Carolina Week.
Our Christian Phillips has been following the other side of the aisle at the Republican gubernatorial candidate Mark Robinson's watch party in Greensboro.
Republicans wrapping up what has been a very successful night here. Mark Robinson working the crowd behind us. Very successful night for him and his team. Last we checked, he's sitting about 68% of the vote. So a landslide win for the lieutenant governor as he clinches the Republican nomination for governor. We also spoke to voters here, and one issue stood out amongst the rest. Yes, sir. So obviously, Lieutenant Governor Robinson has been lieutenant governor now for the last 4 years, but he doesn't have much political experience apart from that. Are there any reservations on your part about voting for him to be our governor?
I actually like that. I think too often we have politicians that make a career out of it, and I don't think our founders ever really intended for that to be how it was going to be. They wanted it to rotate around for everybody that was capable to take a shot at governor.
So as you heard, essentially emulating what President Trump did in 2016 when he ran as an outsider, Mark Robinson doing it here, and so far it's worked for him.
North Carolina voters will return to the polls once more on November 5th to vote in a long list of national, state, local elections. Musin, back to you.
Thank you so much, Sarah.
Coming up on Carolina Week, President Biden and Vice President Harris back in the Tar Heel state, but not without protest. And
we have officially lost stability, and our hope is dripping down the drain.
While HBCU applications in the state are up, students at one school are looking for a different alternative. And Covering Carolina travels back to the 1940s, visiting a unique Pittsburgh soda shop.
From the UNC Hussman School of Journalism and Media, connecting Carolina's campus and community, this is Carolina Week.
It is a wet Wednesday morning here at UNC's campus.
You are looking live right outside the studio where the rain has sizzled down a bit. You can see people walking to class, but we'll have more on that later. I'm Isha Patnaik, and this is Carolina Week.
And I'm Christian Phillips.
Election day is 226 days away, but the presidential campaigns are already in full swing. The rematch between President Biden and former President Trump is already set, with each candidate being the presumptive nominee for their party.
And as election season ramps up, Vice President Biden and Vice President Kamala Harris were back in the triangle this week. Both visited Raleigh once before this year, but yesterday marked the first time the pair visited together. CW's Mayor Fromet was there when the pair made their way to the Old North State to talk to voters about health care and to make their case in the run-up to November's election.
President Biden and Vice President Harris made their way to Raleigh to talk to potential voters of all ages about expanding affordable health care. Many came to see the president give remarks at Travis Community Center, including North Carolina Democrats Attorney General Josh Stein and Governor Roy Cooper.
Tomorrow, we finally expanded Medicaid in North Carolina. Talking with people with tears running down their cheeks, many of them getting health insurance for the first time in their adult life.
The president focused his remarks mainly on health care expansion while referring to the former president's stance on issues such as abortion.
Obamacare. And as many of you know, I thought it was a big deal. Donald Trump and his MAGA friends are, if nothing then but persistent. They've tried to repeal it 50 times, not a joke.
While Biden wanted to focus on health care, some wanted to focus on something else.
The insurance company considered those a pre-existing condition, but allowed them to be monitored.
What about the healthcare in Gaza?
Everybody deserves health care.
Hospitals in Gaza are being bombed. Do this money that can go for here.
Protesters wanting attention on the war in Gaza, they were escorted out.
They have a point. We need to get a lot more care in this country.
One of the many contentious issues he will face in the months to come on the campaign trail as he courts future voters of all ages. Reporting for Carolina Week in Raleigh, I'm Mare Famet.
Before Biden boarded Air Force One for North Carolina, he gave a short press conference on the collapse of the Francis Scott Key Bridge in Baltimore. The bridge collapsed after accidentally being struck by a large cargo ship in the early hours of Tuesday morning.
8 people were on the bridge when it collapsed, and 2 have been rescued so far, according to officials. The other 6 are presumed dead. Maryland Governor Wes Moore says that the ship lost power and gave a mayday before hitting the bridge, which allowed officials to stop traffic.
So in the face of heartbreak, we come together. We embrace one another, and we come back stronger.
An investigation into the crash is being led by the NTSB. Now, on more national news, on both sides of the aisle, Republicans and Democrats need voters to turn out in November in battleground states like North Carolina.
CW's Sarah Thompson reports how UNC's Young Democrats and UNC's GOP members are prepping for the 2024 election.
While the 2024 election is 8 months away, political party student organizations at UNC are working hard to connect with voters now on key issues and candidates in preparation. With a rematch of candidates in the upcoming election, some voters are feeling uninterested in voting.
Sometimes it forces us to be a little complacent.
UNC's Young Democrats and GOP are trying to change these feelings about the election. The UNC Young Democrats invited 56th District NC House Representative Alan Blonsey to talk to them about what they can do to make the changes they want to see. They also organized a phone bank to get voters excited about NC District 25 candidate Lorenza Wilkins.
There's so many little ways to get involved, even just local and statewide politics. But we definitely encourage people to just show up.
Voters our age are very hesitant to go out and actually vote. Us consistently contacting and giving them information that is helpful will allow them to think that the voting in elections, all the information that they're seeing is a lot more easy.
UNC's Republican student organization, UNC GOP, encourages their members to follow key issues like the right to freedom of speech by posting and reposting events on their social media. A member of the UNC GOP told me, quote, "The organization is working to host various speakers, including candidates, to engage with the community and allow students direct access to those running." In Chapel Hill, I'm Sarah Thompson, Carolina Week.
CW will bring you a special edition on young voters at the end of the semester. Democratic Representative Michael Ray has now conceded his race. Monday's concession comes after he filed protests in the northeastern 27th House District, where he trailed primary challenger Rodney Pierce by 35 votes. Recounts requested by Ray did not change the result of the race. The North Carolina Board of Elections certified the results from this month's primary just yesterday. And with no Republican challenger in November, Pierce is slated to head to Raleigh in January.
Behind me, you can see the members of the Chancellor's Search Committee who have now had their first official meeting. President Peter Hans delivered a charge to the committee that asked them to maintain confidentiality and described what he's looking for in the next leader of the university, including integrity, commitment, and a comfort with public scrutiny. The committee also outlined the process it will use to screen and select applicants. Members plan to hold listening sessions starting April 1st with UNC student government to get input. They're aiming to elect a new chancellor by the end of the year.
Another school in the Triangle is searching for a new lease on life. St. Augustine's University is facing fallout after losing its accreditation. Wake County Public Schools will end its early college program with the school as a result. CW's Chris Williams has been following the issue and joins us now in studio. Chris, what's the latest?
The biggest question for parents is what's next for their students. The school system said early college students would be able to take classes at Wake Tech next school year. The school district says this is the best option available because there isn't enough time to partner with another four-year university by the start of next school year. Still, some students and parents say this solution isn't enough.
Be able to transfer out of state or even out of the UNC system like they would have at St. Augustine's. We as students, as one of the most affected parties in this situation, don't have a clear understanding of how your decisions will shape our future.
The school system also published a Q&A document that revealed the Board of Education is still looking for a campus to house these students next year. The board didn't say yet whether students would attend one centrally located high school or the Wake Tech campus closest to their homes. They did say, though, that they would make an announcement within the next few weeks. Definitely a tough break for these students.
Thanks, Chris. You really feel for these folks. They didn't sign up for this.
I know. I hope the resolution, or they find a solution to this problem soon for the sake of these students. Well, while St. Aug's is struggling, some historically black colleges in North Carolina have seen an increase in applications since the Supreme Court's decision on affirmative action last year. CW's Noelle Harris explains why this may be happening.
When Charlotte High School senior Nadia Sase first heard the U.S. Supreme Court ruled affirmative action unconstitutional, she said she was elated.
Now, you can't throw it in my face. You're here because you're black. I'm here because I deserve it.
But shortly after, the high school student began to fear that the decision is making it harder for people of color to get accepted into predominantly white institutions, something she did not see coming.
I'm telling you, people with 6-page resumes, like these people are stacked, very hardworking students. A lot of them got rejected.
Sase said she applied to several predominantly white institutions, including UNC, but her list also included a handful of historically black colleges and universities. She said she believes other applicants of color will turn to HBCUs where they will not feel like a statistic.
We're going to see more people choosing not to just be a statistic or choosing not to just be tolerated, but to go where they're wanted.
The number of NC HBCU applications has increased since the decision, according to several NC admissions offices. Winston-Salem State University's Director of Communications and Media Relations said the school has seen a 41% increase in graduate applications. North Carolina Central University has received 32% more than the previous cycle, according to their Director of Communications and Marketing. Carolina Week reached out to UNC System Media Relations, and they said there is no evidence of the connection between the June decision and the increase in applications at these schools. UNC junior Yasmin Thigpen said that the incoming freshmen are dealing with problems her class did not have to face. She says she only applied to one HBCU, but thinks if she were in their position, she would have applied to more.
And I would want to greater my chances and apply to more schools, like apply to more HBCUs.
Sase said she thinks that diversity at predominantly white schools will be affected as well. She believes that lack of people of color will cause the university and campus relations to suffer. Reporting for Carolina Week, I'm Noelle Harris.
Well, North Carolina has more four-year HBCUs than any other state in the nation and is home to the largest HBCU in the country. The newest state budget allocates over $60 million over the next 2 years to HBCUs in the state.
But the Biden administration says the state has shortchanged over $2 billion over the past 30 years alone. In a story we've continued to follow, public school educators and workers in Durham are voicing their concerns for next year's budget. On Thursday, the union gathered outside the DPS board meeting to advocate for raises for all staff, increased staffing in buildings, more teacher work days, a meet confer policy, and financial transparency.
The protest comes shortly after the Durham Public Schools Board of Education approved an 11% raise for classified staffers for the rest of the academic year following a pay dispute.
The key missing ingredient right now is trust. Yeah. Would you agree? Yeah. Absolutely. Our union, our worker organization, does not have access to basic financial information that we would need to engage in decision-making as informed, equal partners.
Stabilizers. We reached out to the DPS Board of Education, but did not receive a response for comment. The board will vote on the budget later next month.
And coming up on Carolina Week.
The Tar Heels are still dancing, moving on to the Sweet 16 this weekend after beating Michigan State. And the long weekend starts with some rainy weather.
Your 7-day forecast when we return. Stay with us.
As you can see, it's still pouring right now.
Yep, plenty of people walking by with their umbrellas out.
At least it's not raining as hard as it was, so at least we have that.
Absolutely. Stay with us.
Welcome to Carolina Week. I'm Samantha Hoffman.
And I'm Musia Mahmood.
New leadership coming soon on campus and across the state. Our Carolina Week reporters are on it, ready to introduce you to the new student body president and break down the ballot for who is vying for the next state office this election.
But first, Interim Chancellor Lee Roberts is in his second month on the job. Now, I had the opportunity to sit down with him and ask him a few questions. He told me what changes we might see on campus. In terms of your gig currently right now, you said earlier in your first few days of the job, you said it's too early to say whether or not you're going to stay on. Are you currently keeping the seat warm, or are you going to throw your hat into the ring and be our next permanent chancellor?
Yeah, still too early. It's been 5 weeks. We'll cross that bridge when we get to it.
It's been months since August the 28th tragic shooting, and many students feel as though there hasn't really been much. What actually is the university doing? What kind of things can we see?
We've talked about having something at the beginning of each class of each semester, kind of akin to a flight attendant briefing that you get when you get on a plane, that just explains the safety systems in the classroom and makes sure everybody in the class knows how to use them. I mentioned the cameras. We need to do a better job installing more cameras around campus. License plate readers are another technology that we're moving forward with, so we have a better sense of who's driving onto our campus, and there'll be more recommendations from the report that I look forward to.
So can we expect more cameras, more things to enhance safety in the coming few weeks, months?
I think you will see both more cameras and the license plate readers before the end of the semester.
When you were at Duke, and be honest with me, did you for a period of time hate UNC? Was your blood dark blue?
Well, I'll tell you, everybody should be allowed a youthful indiscretion, and I did go to Duke, and I enjoyed my time there, and I'm grateful to Duke for bringing me to North Carolina. First bringing me here when I was 17 years old, but I have seen the light, so I've enjoyed cheering on the heels, and I look forward to doing more of that through the rest of the semester.
So we can officially say that your blood is sky blue.
Sky blue. It's a great day to be a Tar Heel.
I want you guys to take a look at this. There's 13 individuals you see right here. Now, they've been chosen to be part of the search committee to try find the next chancellor. They're faculty, students, staff, and members of the Board of Governors. Now, they haven't met yet, but one member of the Carolina Week told us that she's focused on making sure that UNC staff and the Carolina Week is well represented in the process. Now, they're expected to have an online survey, listen forums, focus groups for more input. Now, there's no word yet on the timeline.
And Carolina Week looked into UNC's policy on chancellor searches. Here's what we learned. The policy indicates that the searches for the chancellors are confidential, suggesting that it maximizes the quality of the candidate search. The Selection Search Committee will propose finalists for the Board of Trustees to consider. Then trustees will submit a list of candidates to the UNC system president, who will then nominate a candidate to the Board of Governors. The governors then elect a chancellor.
And there's a new leadership for UNC students as well. Jalea Taylor won the student body president election in a landslide victory last week. Carolina Week's Lauren Lovett talked to Taylor after the victory. She joins us live now. Lauren, you were at the pit just last week. They're still campaigning out there, right?
Yeah, Moose, and you can see it looks completely different. There is nobody out here canvassing or passing out buttons because the election is over. Jalea Taylor is the new student body president-elect, and she's got a lot planned, but she says that it's all still sinking in for her.
I'm honestly super excited. It still doesn't feel real.
Jalea Taylor is the new student body president-elect. Her first goal in office, increase transparency with the student body.
What I really want to do is familiarize students with student government. I think it's clear, especially with the low voter turnout this year, that a lot of students just aren't aware of what student government does and what we can offer to students.
How she plans on accomplishing that.
Tapping on social media on our executive branch team and filling students in on what we're doing. I think this past year, especially as secretary, I try to do a lot of that, but I think leveraging the power as student body president on like different initiatives is something that I'm looking to do.
One of her other priorities is ensuring students have access to what they need, something that Christopher Williams, Taylor's field director, wants to work on.
A lot of the work that I'm excited to hopefully continue doing in the Taylor administration is around supporting basic needs at Carolina. So that's food insecurity, housing insecurity, financial literacy education.
Taylor is still a few months from officially taking on the role. She'll be sworn into office in April. In Chapel Hill, I'm Lauren Lovett, Carolina Week.
Stay up to date with everything that Jalea and the rest of the executive branch is up to, check out our website. Back to you.
Thank you, Lauren. New developments in the death of a UNC student killed in a car crash. Criminal charges have now been filed. Carolina Week's Jessica Simmons explains what we've learned about the moments that led to the deadly crash.
Carolina 911, where's your emergency? Excuse me, sir, it's been a wreck.
The 911 call for help came from this road, where a deadly car crash claimed the life of UNC student Molly Rotunda.
Unconscious though. Somebody is unconscious though, sir.
Confusion and panic as the caller reported somebody unconscious, but still breathing. Investigators say 20-year-old UNC student Flamesia Brewer was behind the wheel of the deadly car crash. Brewer is now facing 12 criminal charges, including felony death by vehicle, driving while impaired, and involuntary manslaughter. 2 other individuals at the scene of the accident were also charged. And 2 bars are now under scrutiny. Still Life and Might As Well on Franklin Street, where investigators say the driver and others underage with her, including Rotunda, were served alcohol that night, leading 7 others to face several alcohol-related charges. We're here at the scene where that car accident took place. The car ran off the road and flipped into this area. We reached out to the university and they want to remind everyone of late-night transportation services such as the P2P, which offers rides home for students up to 3 a.m. They're also offering mental health services for students who lost their classmate. We also reached out to the Rotunda family about these new criminal charges, to which they said no comment. In Chapel Hill, I'm Jessica Simmons, Carolina Week.
Thank you, Jessica. Brewer is scheduled to be back in court in April.
Now, in a story we've continued to follow, there's new developments in the pay dispute between Durham Public Schools and over 1,000 classified employees.
Staff walkouts have already closed schools in Durham for several days. Carolina W's Chris Williams joining us in the studio now.
Chris, you've been attending Durham Public Board of Education meetings over the past few weeks. How is the Board of Education continuing to deal with this conflict?
They're actually adding a new committee. Durham School Board members will appoint 13 community members to their Meet and Confer committee tomorrow evening. This follows last Thursday's meeting with the Durham Association of Educators. School board members raised concerns about representation after unaffiliated transportation staff walked out at the beginning of the meeting. DAE Vice President Turquoise Lejeune Parker said these concerns were valid. She also said she hoped the board's decision to designate 4 non-DAE seats on the committee would help make sure all are represented.
Imagine somebody who's seeing an $800 difference in somebody who has 3 kids to take care of and made very massive transitions in their life based off of the money that they were getting in the fall. I can't tell you how to feel about that. And that's a very, very real thing to remember.
The Durham Committee on the Affairs of Black People meeting earlier this week. What did they have to say?
The community group held a press conference on Monday at Shepherd Middle School. The committee asked all DPS employees to refrain from demonstrations that would disrupt classes for the next 30 days. The board also asked the county commissioners to provide DPS with the necessary funding to maintain pay raises for classified staff until the end of this school year. When asked why the committee wouldn't send a representative to join the meet and confer process, Jackson said the committee didn't believe it was their place to intervene.
I don't know that we would be adverse to participating in such a discussion. Certainly if we are invited to, we would accept such an invitation, but we have not been invited to, and we don't want to try to force our way into such a conversation.
The Board of Education will also be voting on whether to keep the raises for classified employees past February. Back to you.
Chris, thank you. Also in Durham, the City Council is now asking for the White House to call a ceasefire in Gaza and end U.S. military aid to Israel. In a 5-2 vote, the Council passed the ceasefire resolution. Raleigh and Chapel Hill chose to not pursue a vote on ceasefire resolution.
In the weeks and even hours leading up to the vote, ceasefire supporters hosted demonstrations outside Durham City Hall. Durham is now the second city in North Carolina to call for a ceasefire. UNC's chapter for Students for Justice in Palestine is also calling for a ceasefire. The group came together to protest this week, calling for the university to divest from Israel. It's not the first protest in November. The group did actually sit in the South Point building last November.
Coming up on Carolina Week.
But that's millions of them doing it at the same time.
An unlikely visitor taking over the spring.
And a new inclusive playground is coming to Chapel Hill.
And our Sarah Thompson joins us to talk all things politics.
All that and more next on Carolina Week.
Stay with us.